What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? You got the almighty DJ CJ Flash back with a brand new live episode of I Remember That Song, and here to tell you all about it is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jerry Dove.
CJ Flash, Dominus Ominous. How about this shirt? This is for Russell. You know, this is like a whole shirt full of brooches. Can you see that?
Is that a shirt? A brooch shirt?
It's a shirt full of brooches. Ain't nothing but flowers on here. Hold on. Here. Look at that.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
You see what I got there?
I see what you did there.
Yeah, so
I'm not mad at you.
He may not be here to see it, but we don't tell him all about it.
It looks like anime.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not mad at it.
Okay, well, thank you. I like it too. Well, what's happening, man? I don't sense that energy, bro. I don't sense that energy today.
What energy? What energy?
Your energy. I don't feel it. We weren't on last week. We got this show.
You want me to do it again?
Just the last part of it. You know, the man, the myth, the legend.
And here to tell you all about it is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jerry Dove.
That's what I'm talking about, brother. That's what I'm talking about. Let's bring in Ryan Nicole here so we can add to the energy and to the flavor. How you doing, young lady?
Does that help?
That's the kind of energy we're talking about. That's what we're talking about.
What's up, y'all?
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be back with you.
Yeah. We missed last week. We did a repeat of the Kevin Ross show last week. You know, I never told you guys that after Kevin fussed at me during that show about getting caught up and downloading music, I went and bought a whole new sound system for my car. Which included Sirius radio and all, because I didn't have that before. Now the problem is now I can't play CDs in the car anymore.
Oh, geez.
So I have to play Sirius XM. And I got to find a place to play CDs in the house. So it's happening. I'm in, but I'm out.
It's hard.
I'm in, but I'm out.
It's hard. Is there anywhere to play the 8 tracks? Anywhere?
I don't have any 8 tracks.
Oh, okay.
Contrary to popular demand, I have no 8 tracks. I never did have. To tell you the truth, I never did have 8 tracks.
You never had an 8 track?
I never had 8 tracks. I went from 45s and albums to cassettes.
Really?
I never had an 8 track.
You never had a deuce and a quarter. That's why.
No,
that's it.
That's it.
See, you should have grew up in Richmond. You'd have had a deuce and a quarter.
Okay. I'm like Dodge Polara. All right, so everybody's good. I'm hoping that Russell can make it tonight. If not, we're going to move forward because we got a great guest. It's Black History Month, and this show is all about celebrating Black History Month. I've got a great person with us. It's Dr. Pascal Bokar Thiam.
Yes.
He is a guitarist, a vocalist, a composer, and he works at the University of San Francisco. He's a professor over there. The Pascal Bokar Afro Bluegrass, the GRAZZ band, is one of the most exciting world music bands in the entire country. This man combines West African music to American music and gives us. What am I talking about? Let him tell you all about it as we welcome Dr. P is what he likes to be called.
Dr. T.
Dr. T. Where would the T come? Oh, Dr. T, the last name.
Because his first name is Pascal, I know.
All right, so for y'all who don't know, his last name is spelled Thim, but he pronounces it Cham. But he wants to be Dr. T. So I'm all.
It's from the motherland. Come on, man.
I'm just call you Doctor. How about that?
Oh, man.
Doctor.
Oh, man.
How are you, sir?
I'm very well. Very happy to be on the show. It's great to see Ryan.
Good to see you, Dr. T, as well.
Great to see you all you had a great celebration down in Yerba Buena. It was really a pleasure to be a guest on your event. It was very successful. So fired up.
I thought that once you did that, then we had to have you come do a show, especially during Black History Month. I thought it would be great. So I want everybody out there to listen up because this man's got some great things he's going to tell us about music. You're going to find out something about a particular instrument that you probably might not have known came from West Africa. That's all I'm going to tell you for right now. So before we go any further, Ryan Nicole, you want to tell people where we are, how they can find us?
I surely do. Y'all, we're about to get educated. So I really want you all to be in the room today and invite your friends because we could never learn too much. So follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all the social medias. We are all there. And make sure you click, beyond clicking like, make sure you click subscribe. That's how you find out about what's happening. That's how you get the early updates. That's how you know that people like Dr. Chum are with us on today. And so, yeah, subscribe. There's always extra stuff there. And then, of course, to our people who are over in the UK, we say we salute you. From Soul TV, we do remember back when, and we are so glad to have you here. Let's all sit back, grab your tea, and let's enjoy this ride.
Let's have some fun. Okay, Doctor, let's start first of all by finding out a little bit about you. Okay, so you're, like I said, you're at USF, but you were born in West Africa.
No, actually, I was born in Paris.
Born in Paris and raised in West Africa. Okay, talk about that.
And then my parents moved us. Moved me to Mali, and you have to remember that in that time, most of West Africa was under the French colonial system. Mm-hmm. And so my father, who was originally from Mali and Senegal, those two countries used to be one. It was part of the Empire of Mali. But the French divided that empire, and on the left side of the river, they called it Senegal. The right side, it kept the name Mali. But what the French had decided to do was that they would give full scholarships to young West African kids to go to Paris to go to college. And you have to remember, it's a very important time, both on the continent of Africa and in the United States. That's a period of the independence movements in West Africa. And we're talking roughly between 1950 and 1965. That coincide with the height of the civil rights movement in the United States. And these, in less than 15 years, because of the decision the French made to take young Africans to their universities, when these kids land in Paris, they land in London, they land in Brussels, to go to college to become lawyers, doctors, surgeons, they learn about governments, they learn about laws, they learn about civil rights, and all of a sudden they say to themselves, what has happened to us?
Right.
So the paradox and the contradictions created such an energy that in less than 15 years, as a result of that decision, all 7 colonial powers of Europe lost all of their colonies in Africa. My father was an activist in the PAI, which was the Party of African Independence, and Mali became one of the first areas of West Africa to become independent. And so he had graduated from college and he was working in France. I was born there, and he was asked by the government to come and help to set up the new Malian Republic. And that's how I grew up in Ségou, which was the capital at the time of the Federation of Mali, on the banks of the Niger River, which is one of the third largest rivers on the continent of Africa.
Nice.
I'm doing that detour so that we can understand how important the civil rights movement in the United States, how important it was as a correlation to the independence movement in Africa, all over Africa, south, east, west, north, and center.
Yeah.
So we have lived apart, but we've conducted the same struggle for civil rights, from which the entire planet has benefited.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And every group on the planet has benefited. People of African descent have led that battle. So that's a long answer to your question, but I wanted to just sort of give us that perspective so that we would understand later on the importance of the music, the culture, and how it got disseminated in North America, in Central America, in the Caribbean, and in South America.
Well, we appreciate that. This is a Black History show, so you need to tell us some of our history, because some people are trying not to let that happen, but you can talk all night long about that right here. So when did you come to the States, and how did you get here?
I came to the United States in 1983. I went to the Berklee College of Music. My father loved jazz, and he loved jazz, and he played jazz literally every day in the house. And he played jazz because when he was in Paris, African-American musicians who were fleeing Jim Crow were in Europe.
Yes.
And they were in large number in Paris. And so my father, as a student, knew Dizzy Gillespie, he knew Bud Powell, he knew Miles Davis. And so when he went back to Africa with my mother and myself, he brought those records and he kept playing that music. And jazz is an art form. And it is the art form that has lifted this nation to the status of a cultural superpower.
Undoubtedly.
There isn't a nation in the world that does not have a jazz festival. I go to Japan, they have jazz festival. I go to Scandinavia, Denmark, they have jazz festival.
That's right.
Europe has jazz festival. Turkey has jazz festival. You go to South Africa, West Africa, they have jazz festival. You go to Brazil, they have jazz festival. You go to Singapore, they have jazz. India, it's an amazing art form. And it was an avenue where Africans in America displayed the mastery and their genius through their art. Because art is power.
Yes.
And so when we talk about jazz, and I came to the Berklee College of Music because I was a jazz musician. I went back to Europe. I played with a lot of musicians there. And my father, as an African, was very intent on making sure that I would get the best education possible. Most people don't realize that the concept of school started in Africa. Yes, the school started in Africa 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And 10,000 years ago, Europe was only coming out of the Ice Age. You see, there is a misconception, and we need to rethink the narrative. And the narrative is that there is nothing in Africa, and in the 19th century, Europeans said Africa is no part of history. That was part of an agenda. The reality is that from linear writing, which Africa invented, writing was invented in Africa, to the paper on which we write, that was also invented in Africa. The oldest books are in Africa. The term Bible comes from the Egyptian term Bibla. That's an African term.
Nice.
That means book. Africans built universities in the south of Spain, in Andalusia, 500 years before they appear in France and in Great Britain. So the notion that we didn't have any contribution, that's a completely false narrative. That's an agenda. An agenda needed to justify the Atlantic slave trade. That's the reason why I said to show that content information in education is a policy decision. There is a vested interest in connecting the African American community, the African continent, its traditions, and its heritage.
Yeah.
Which brings me to one of the important musical instruments from West Africa. After the foundation and the umbilical cord to Africa, which is the banjo.
Say that one more time. We're going to pull the music down so we can hear you. What is the instrument that that comes from Africa.
So the instrument that comes from West Africa, 99% of African Americans are from the west part of the African continent, from Nigeria and Cameroon to the west, all the way to Senegal and Mali, including Ghana, Liberia, and Nigeria and so forth. These populations in the west part of the continent have, even if they don't always speak the same languages, they have the instruments in common. They have the music in common.
Yes.
They have the sense of rhythm in common.
Yes.
They have that sense of pulse that Ellington called swing.
Yeah.
To which he wrote, it don't mean a thing if he ain't got that swing. And what he was referring to is that pulse that comes from the west part of the African continent.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the entire continent swings.
Yeah.
That's wherever Africans went, Africa went.
Yeah.
In the relationship with the United States, the basis, which we call Godi in Mali, or Khalab in Senegal, same instrument. That instrument is extremely important because it's a vehicle to which West African culture, tradition, rhythm, syncopation traveled to the plantation of the southern United States.
Yes.
Okay, let me get in here real quick, Dr. T, because you could do this all night long, I know. But we got to take a minute to breathe and put our notes together and get all that kind of thing together. So CJ is going to play a little bit of your music, and we're going to talk about that, and we're just going to keep moving. CJ, if we can, just the bed underneath, let's not, because it's with his phone connection, it's not quite working for him.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, so just go ahead and play a song for us, and let's talk about that. Okay, let's do it like this, Dr. T. So you're going to tell us what that song is. We're going to talk about it for a couple of seconds, and we're going to get on to another song. So what was that? So
this was a Malian, a fantastic Malian musician who holds the tradition alive by the name of Masekou Kouyaté. Mm-hmm. He's from a little village near Ségou, near where I grew up. And he's a master banjo player. Whom you heard was his wife, and you just heard a little bit. But when you hear the sound of the plantations, what we call the field hollers or the work songs, you can hear when she's singing, you can hear these tonalities that are so important and so essential, that were carried, that were transported with Africans to the Mississippi Delta, to the Carolinas, to Virginia, to Louisiana. And when she sings, we don't have the notation system to write what she's singing. You heard me. We can't notate what she's singing.
Right.
And what she sings is so powerful that when the European American white scholars who studied the conservatories, when they went to the plantation and they heard these African populations singing in the cotton fields, they said, we hear these tonalities, but we don't know what they are. We're going to call them blue notes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Blue notes. The term blues comes from their calling these tonalities blue notes. Mm-hmm. Africans never called their music anything. Music was specific to either a purpose, like a harvest or a wedding or a religious ceremony or ritual. The term blues comes out of the recognition that these populations were bringing to the plantations of the United States a culture and a sound that was not part of the vocabulary of Bach and Beethoven.
Mm-hmm.
That foundation comes from West Africa. It's a foundation that gave birth to the blues, that gave birth to the African American revolution that we call gospel.
Yes.
Because if you listen to the old time gospel singers, you hear what she's singing in what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Mahalia, when she sings, Rosetta Top, when they're going on their solos, you can hear these tonalities. This is not what the school of Bach and Beethoven is telling you to sing.
Not at all.
You wrote a book. You wrote a book called "From Timbuktu to the Mississippi Delta."
Yes.
Yeah.
And that basically is what you're talking about now. Is that's what described in the book?
Yeah. It was a book. I didn't understand why that book had not been written.
Right.
I had been teaching jazz history, and every jazz history book started in 1865 New Orleans.
Yeah, right.
Like 1865 New Orleans. I said, this is negating or making invisible the contribution of Africans in this nation, because the way the books were written led you to believe that jazz and its foundation came from a great number of people.
Yeah, convergence of the sounds from France and Spain.
And I was like, no. We need to tell the truth.
Right.
The banjo is a West African instrument.
Right.
It is the oldest string instrument in America.
Yeah.
That instrument is a vehicle for West African tradition and culture.
Mm-hmm.
It is the foundation, it is the umbilical cord to Africa.
Yeah.
That needs to be articulated and that needs to be stated academically.
Mm-hmm.
There is no fog around that.
Right. Would you also argue, Dr. T, that what I have heard called the Africanism, so polyrhythm and repetition and call and response,
definitely,
and what's another one?
Blue notes.
Yeah, and the blue notes, right, are all also from the continent, and without which we wouldn't have any popular music, jazz, any of it.
Absolutely. This is in the few seconds that we heard, you heard some fundamental things. On the African continent, the notion of pulse, or what we call swing, comes from the recognition that first we need to have a steady tempo. And in Wolof, which is the language we speak in Senegal, we say, when we teach the young kids, we say "Gede Lolu," which means you die with this. When we give, that doesn't move. Because once you establish a steady tempo, the polyrhythm, and you heard it in the few seconds, you could hear something going tick, 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 tick.
That's right.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. African all over the continent are people who consider rhythm as a ternary form of expression. Ternary means 1, 2, 3. We don't play 1, 2.
That's right.
1, 2, 3. And when you do 1, 2, 3, you create a pulse. You create a groove. There's a recognition that inside the 2, you've created an element of 3 that makes it serves as motion.
Yes, that's right.
That's where the term swing comes from. It does exactly what you heard a little bit. You could hear it. There was something going tick 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 tick. That's what the drummer does on the right cymbal when you play the music of Ellington.
Right.
Ellington used to say that he didn't like the term jazz. You know what he would call it? He said he would call it Negro folk music.
Yes. Yeah.
You heard me. Negro folk music. And that meant that this was not a music that was born out of a confluence of, it meant that this was a music that had its foundation in the culture of Africa first. And so when I wrote the book, and I mean, I studied the thing, Africans come in 1500, not in 1619, in 1500.
Right, prior to.
Yeah, until 1888. 1888 is the date at which the U.S. government pushes back a ship from Great Britain that's coming with Africans in it. So that's sort of the line that we use. But if you go to St. Augustine, Florida, which is a little town north of Orlando, there is a plaque that says King of Spain with Africans. It says 1550.
Yeah.
So do you know how long it takes? How long after? Because back then Spaniards were in Florida before the French and the British moved them out of there. So there was an African presence in the South well before 1619. 1619 is a valid date, though, because that's a date that we have a piece of paper that said we purchased these people for the
chattel slavery.
Exactly. So that's why certain scholars use 1619 as a reference point. I don't have an argument with this. My only point is that Africans are there.
Yes.
The power that brings them there is not a Dutch power or a British power. It is a Spanish power. So their contribution, when you look at, we have to understand immigration in the United States. Most people think that it was always the majority, that Europeans were always the majority. They were not.
No. Yeah.
Africans in the South are the majority population. In certain counties, sometimes 4-1. So they come in big numbers. They establish the foundation of a culture.
Right.
One of the first elements, along with music, is food.
Right.
All of the foods of the South are the foods of West Africa.
That's right. Rice.
Rice comes out of Africa. It comes out of that area called Senegal and Gambia. These were the people who knew how to cultivate it. They were brought for that purpose. And in the 18th century, rice is the dominant economy of the Carolinas. So you look at gumbo, that's West Africa. Black eyed peas, that's West Africa. Right. The concept of wraps, that's West Africa. So if we were to take all of this out of the food of the South, we would be left with nothing.
They'd be hungry.
I'm getting hungry right now.
I know.
Let me jump in here one more time to tell people you're watching IRTS Live. I remember that song. Tonight, a special edition for Black History Month. We've got the Dr. Pascal Bokar Thiam, spelled with a T. So we're going to call him Dr. T tonight because that's what they call him at the USF, University of San Francisco, where he teaches this kind of thing. He also is a musician, a vocalist. He's got an Afro bluegrass band. We're going to hear some more music. Go ahead, CJ. Let's go.
What a baby my mama done. Sweet child, what a baby in my mama. When a baby
Yeah.
Now that sounds like some early blues from like the early 1900s and that kind of thing. So is that what I'm hearing?
That's right. That's a great song. Yeah.
Who was that?
Well, CJ.
Oh, that's Son House.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Son House is probably one of the most important musicians to come out of the South because he's the main influence on two very, very important musicians, Charlie Patton, Robert Johnson, and Buddy Warner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so his approach to the music is so fundamentally African in essence. When you hear him, you know that's not the school of Bach and Beethoven.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it comes from somewhere. You know, we were talking about the blue notes. I mean, that's all we heard.
That's all you hear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's singing and it is playing. Mm-hmm. You know, the play, the shifting the intonation of the string by bending them and the slide and all of that. I mean, these are West African aesthetics. You know, one of the things people forget is that the reason why Africans and African Americans in particular succeeded on the North American continent was through the strengths of the African traditions. Mm-hmm. Music, which is the vehicle through which spirituality connects us to the Creator, because it's a music and the rhythm that induces the possession of the Spirit that connects us to the Creator. Music bound us as a people, as a surviving people in North America.
Right.
And so when you listen to Soundhouse, you're listening to Africa. And African American music has always had its roots in Africa, and it was open to the future in terms of what else is coming next. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you see that in hip hop. Mm-hmm. I mean, what is more rhythmic on the face of the planet than what rappers and young hip hop musicians are doing?
Right.
It's all rhythm. Mm-hmm. I tell my students in Mali, we don't have a term for music because music is an expression of language. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We make the instrument speak.
That's right.
In my band, we play an instrument called the balafon, which is when the Greeks discovered it in the pyramid, they called it xylophone. Mm-hmm. But we had that in Africa before the Greeks. Mm-hmm. The Greeks, 600 before Christ. The pyramids, they are 3,000 years before Christ. Mm-hmm. And West Africa has civilization that are talking about one God. In Nigeria, the Yoruba tradition of the Orisha, 8,000 years.
Yes, sir.
So that instrument, the balafon in Malenke comes from the sentence baladafo, which means to make the wood speak.
Wow. Wow.
So when you listen to this sound, these tonalities, when you listen to Soundhouse, this is Africa speaking to you, because wherever Africans went, Africa went. That's why it didn't matter whether it was the blues or whether it was swing or whether it was bebop or whether it was R&B or whether it was some form of rock and roll or whether it was soul music of James Brown. Mm-hmm. All these music swung. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Whether you call it reggae swings. Right. Or whether you call it calypso, it swings. Or you go to Cuba, it swings. If you go downtown New York, salsa, it swings. Puerto Rican music swings. Colombian music swings. Brazilian music swings. It's called the samba. Wherever Africans went, Africa went.
That's right.
So let me ask you this. Now, we touched on the banjo a little earlier. You said that it came from West Africa. How did the banjo become connected with country music here in the States? Was it just another thing that they kind of took and made it their own, tried to make it their own, or why is it more connected with country music than West African music or Black music?
No, it's not. That's a really important question, because we need to understand.
I'll leave now. Thank you very much. All downhill from here, Dr. T.
This is such a fundamentally important question, because that instrument that represented the umbilical cord to Africa is going to leave the community because of an event that happens, which is called the minstrelsy. The minstrel shows were a degrading kind of show that white America began to enjoy, where they were painting their faces black and their lips and going around from state to state making fun of the African American community. And the banjo, which was the most important instrument at the time in the 1800s in the library of instruments, was the banjo was the instrument of the minstrel shows.
Right.
And so the African American community decided at that point that they wanted nothing to do with that vector, because they did not want to be associated with the minstrel shows. That's a period of Jim Crow. It's a very bad, and pre-Jim Crow, it's a very bad period in the United States. You have to remember, the minstrel shows were the first $1 million entertainment vehicle in the United States. The American troops used to go to Europe. It's the Europeans who told white American business owners, don't bring these bands over here anymore. We don't think they're funny. We've heard black music. And by the way, the same Europeans told white Americans, stop playing classical music. You have an art form. That's our music. You have an art form. We've listened to it. We don't know how to play it. You have to go on the other side of the tracks. And it's called jazz. Not classical music. And so when you ask why the banjo, that's the reason why the banjo left the community, the black community. But if you go to Mississippi, if you go to Louisiana, black people are still playing the banjo.
Yes.
And I forget that. We're not. But as a general rule, when African Americans move to the Great Migration to the big city, the urban center, Chicago, Kansas City, New York, they left the banjo, they picked up the guitar instead. Now, I want to go back to the banjo because the question you posed was really important. Why is it that we see it in country music and we don't see it? That's because African Americans created country music. They are the architects of country music, and they're the architects of bluegrass music.
Right.
You need the banjo to play bluegrass. You need that instrument, these colors from Africa, these colors from the Mississippi Delta, the blues, the syncopation of the banjo. Otherwise, you don't have anything.
That's right.
That instrument is the fundamental instrument of the early music, which we call country music.
Yep.
Well, who was in the country before everyone else?
Right. It was us.
Somebody talk to me. You know what I mean? I mean, the godfather of bluegrass is a man of African descent by the name of Arnold Schultz. There would be no Chet Atkins, there would be no Doc Watson, there would not be any Merle Travis. You know that finger picking? He created and he taught them that. Come on. Leslie Riddle is a guitar player, the blues guitar player, was shown to the white family, was one of the important family in country music. European Americans, British, the white family and the Carter family, from Rosanne Carter and Johnny Cash, how to play the blues and where to put those chords in the music.
Right.
Black people.
That's right.
Created country music. There's no country music before. What's his name? Lead Belly. So what are we talking about? Yes, the industry took over. The majority, with immigration, the majority population became of European descent. So they took over. Right. And this is what happened. It's not so much in the United States happened that it happened that it's black and white, but it's a relationship of numbers. When you're a minority number living in a majority number, whatever art you create, if the majority decide that they like it, they're going to take it away from you. But you want to hear early country music, just play Son House.
Right.
Charlie Patton play. The term blues only comes in the 20th century. These people were playing country music.
Right.
Blues comes in the 20th century when European Americans decided that there was a market they could sell this music.
Mm-hmm.
Said that before that they call it race record, they call it end music, they call it all kinds of derogatory terms until it started selling in Europe.
Right.
And more people want to see these derogatory terms attached to the music because they came. See, Europeans had a different outlook because they were comfortable with their art because they created great art. It's called classical music. They were comfortable in their contributions. They knew that was theirs. Mm-hmm. But white Americans came here and the art that was created was not of theirs. Mm-hmm. Black people created the art for the United States. So there's the paradox. You have a minority population, black, who creates an art form that identifies the majority of the country. They want to take it over.
Mm-hmm. Dr. T, let me ask you this, or let me tell you this, since I'm on a roll now with my profound statements here. I've always joked with people, and now listening to you makes me realize it might not be such a joke. And Ryan and Cole, you can jump in here and CJ Flash too, that you guys know more about hip hop than I ever will. But I've always said that hip hop and country music were like cousins because they're both talking about their dogs. The country's talking about their four-legged dogs. Hip hop is me and CJ is my dog. They're both talking about alcohol. They're chasing women. They got sad songs. They've been, just all these crazy things that are going on in their life. And it's a culture. You can't be putting on a cowboy hat and thinking that you're a country star. You can't put on a whatever you want to call hip hop garments and you're not part of the culture. It'll look like a Halloween costume if you're not part of that culture. So I really think that hip hop and country are cousins. That's why songs with Nelly and whatever he did, was it Ted McGraw, whoever? Tim McGraw. Why it works, and somebody's doing it now. And I see so many African Americans now are kind of taking over country music or taking it back. Maybe we should say.
I think Dr. T said it right, where country is blues. I mean, country and blues music have a strong relationship, right? And hip hop really is blues. Blues is about telling the story. Blues is about, not wallowing, but expressing the sadness when we get to lyricism, right? Blues is about the feeling. And if you aren't part to this day, if you aren't part of the blues canon, or if you aren't in that culture, you cannot play around with it. I think that's where the relationship is, and country music, or what we know as popular country now, is a derivative of that, I think.
I think the concept of storytelling, because essentially that's what we're talking about here. Storytelling is a profound element of culture in African communities. That's how we pass on knowledge. That's how we inform the younger generation. That's what we go to listen to on Sundays at church. When we talk about country music, I think it's really important that we reverse the Hollywood narrative. The reason why people were called cowboys is because the cowboys were the black people who handled the cows in the plantation.
Boys, yes.
Boys, cowboys. Most people forget that the plantation owners were not the one moving the cattle from Louisiana or Texas to Montana. You had an entire set of black towns all the way into Montana on the Chisholm Trail that crosses the United States north and south. Most people forget that. The first cowboys in the United States and the best cowboys in the United States were people of African descent. People forget that. Hollywood gave us the story of Gary Cooper and John Wayne and all those. These guys were not cowboys. The cowboys looked like you and me. And we had women in the mix as well. Now they're starting to pull back some of the the very heroic figure that we had in the African American community that were female. Let me tell you something else. It's the 9th and the 10th Infantry Cavalry Unit, which were called the Buffalo Soldiers.
Yes, sir.
These are the people, entire regiment, 15,000 African Americans. These are the people who were tasked with creating safe passages. First of all, fighting the Native Americans all over the West, but creating safe passages for white pioneers going to California.
Yeah.
People don't realize that when you're watching a Hollywood film and you see and you hear the cavalry coming, you think of a white cavalry. That was not who was coming. The cavalry was black.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, somebody. So it becomes infuriating.
Yeah,
Because all that information exists.
it does.
Mm.
Why isn't it in the books?
Mm.
From Mali to Bass Reeves.
Yeah.
Bass Reeves was the most celebrated U.S. Marshal in the history of the U.S. Marshal Service, an African-American genius. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to tell our story. So to go back to your earlier question, why did I write a book? I wrote a book because it had not been written before I showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really wrong. 1983. I mean, I wrote the book in 2011. And you know, the book, there was a giant of jazz by the name of Randy Weston. Randy Weston was a protege of Duke Ellington and Thelonious Monk.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away 2 years ago at the age of 95.
Wow.
He was a giant. When you get a chance, you should play his music for. And when Randy saw my book, he gave me a call. And he said, Dr. T, you wrote my story.
Mm. Mm.
At first, I was surprised because I was like, when did I thought that I was writing a book. And so I paused. He said, the book you wrote is so important.
Mm-hmm.
How can I help?
Mm.
Would you consider writing the foreword? And he said, absolutely. Randy Weston was an NEA jazz master, wrote the foreword of my book.
Outstanding.
He took that book. Randy Weston knows the blues, knows jazz. He was one of the most celebrated jazz musicians. He spent time in Africa. He had a jazz club in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He knew the music. He knew the culture. He was an advocate. But he had to deal with that disconnect that exists between what we teach about Africa and the reality of the African continent.
Mm-hmm.
So people make us try to make us think that Africa is so far away. I say it takes less time to fly from New York to Dakar, which is the capital of Senegal, than it takes to fly from New York to San Francisco.
That's right.
Africa,
How about that? How about that?
Africa, it's old over there. I say it's not on its own. You could walk from Mali to China.
Right.
You know why? The Suez Canal that they dug in Egypt, that's in the 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
You could walk. How do you think we got black people in China?
Right.
My last name, Cham, is fundamentally African. Do you know you find my last name in Asia?
Wow.
Wow.
Asian people are looking at me. They say, how come you have your name? I said, you have my name. My folks walked over there. How do you think you got there?
Right. That's right.
I mean, come on, somebody. You know.
I love it. I love it. And listen, we call this show I Remember That Song, IRTS Live. I see it's a combination of music plus education plus entertainment plus fun. And I'm having a lot of fun getting educated about music by you.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to hear some more? Let's go ahead, CJ.
I got you.
Now that one is one of yours.
It is one of mine, yes.
Yes, that's the kind of thing they hear when they see you guys performing. You guys have performed all over the world. You're well thought of as one of the best world music bands in the entire country. Like you mentioned earlier, jazz festivals all around the world. You personally have performed with Dizzy Gillespie, Donald Byrd, all the other jazz greats. Man, we are happy to have you here. But let's talk about your music. Where can people find your music? Let's sell a few CDs, albums, 8-tracks, cassettes? What are we selling? Downloads. We downloading your music. What are we doing?
Yeah, you can do all of that. You just enter Pascal Bokar, and you can find all that music. It's out there. Mm-hmm. And if you go to my website, you can get it as well, pascalbokar.com. Yeah, I mean, the instrument that you heard in sequence, you heard the balafon. You know that when Africans took that to South America, they called it marimba. Same thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you heard the fiddle, and then you heard the banjo. That banjo was funky.
Yeah, it was.
You know, the idea. Look, man, when we play the banjo, that thing swings hard. Mm-hmm. You know. So you asking me about country music? We lived in the country. Africans were the first one in the country. They created country music. Mm-hmm. When Europeans come in big numbers between 1780 and 1840, they move into Kentucky, they move into the Appalachian, they move into Tennessee. They find on the banks of the Tennessee River these African populations who play the banjo, who play those sounds of the Delta. They ask them, can you teach us to play that instrument? Because there isn't a single banjo in England, in Scotland, and in Ireland.
Right.
Africans teach them.
Right.
Bluegrass is born out of that. Of course, this European population came with a heritage of their own, tradition of their own. They're of Celtic heritage. Mm-hmm. So they learned the banjo, they learned to play the blues sound, they learned the syncopation, they add their Celtic heritage. That creates bluegrass, authentically American. Bluegrass does not exist in Europe.
Right.
So that's a perfect example of cross-cultural fertilization, you know. But when it comes to understanding jazz as an art form, we have to understand that jazz was more than a popular form.
Right.
The level of technical mastery that Louis Armstrong is bringing, that Art Tatum is bringing on the piano, that Fats Waller is bringing on the piano, that Dizzy Gillespie is going to bring, that Charlie Parker is going to bring. That level of technical mastery is what moved this popular form of music to an art form. And I'm going to tell you, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I love the mention of all of our greats, all of the forefathers of jazz and all of that. I also want to bring up, you know, a couple of women that were in the game. And every time you talk about this, what comes up for me is the Tree of Jazz or the Tree of Music by Mary Lou Williams, who was a virtuoso in her own right, you know, pianist who was a jazz musician, but she has the Tree of Jazz or Tree of Music that goes from suffering to you know, rock and roll and different forms of rock and roll. But she talks about how it comes from exactly what you're talking about: work songs, field hollers, African music, and moves on up.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, one of the tendencies is, and that's been part of the narrative, and when it comes to jazz, we've had a tendency to forget the role of women in the making of that art form.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. The first vocalists were women in the blues idiom. The first concepts of improvisation, of instrumental improvisation, were modeled after women singing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you go back to the history, whether you're looking at Ma Rainey and her student Betty
Carter? No.
No. Bessie Smith.
Bessie Smith. Okay.
And you look at the entire tradition of singing and playing the guitar, you have an inordinate amount of women that played a very important role at every level during the Jazz Age. One of the most important women was rarely mentioned is the wife of Louis Armstrong.
Mm.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Louis, when he goes to Chicago to play with King Oliver, King Oliver is a piano player, and that piano player is a woman, and she looks at Louis. She's not really that enamored with Louis. He's too big. She thinks that she actually doesn't like him at the beginning. And when you see the impact that she's going to have on him, she's the reason. She tells Louis, I don't want to be married to a second trumpet player. Her name is Lil Harding.
Okay.
Lil Harding, that's Louis' second wife. Right, yeah. And she's the one who directs him to go to leave King Oliver's band in Chicago to New York, where he's going to work with the father of big band, which is another creation of African Americans, which created swing, by the name of Fletcher Henderson. I mean, Lil Harding is an amazing piano player, because you have to remember, for a woman to be in a band with King Oliver and Louis Armstrong, she had to be bad.
She had to be bad.
She was not there by accident. You're going to see when we get into the end of the swing period, into the bebop revolution, you have women there. Beverly Williams is right at the vanguard of that. She's a great piano player. She's a great arranger. But you also have an amazing vocalist who happens to be an amazing piano player, and it's a she.
Nina?
And her name is Sarah Vaughan.
Oh, Sarah. Oh, wow.
Sarah Vaughan was in the first bebop big band in the history. Do you know who was in that big band? Charlie Parker, Dexter Gordon, Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, Fats Navarro. The drummer was Art Blakey.
What?
Sarah Vaughan was playing piano. Do you know how bad she had to be?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Wow is right.
Yeah.
And so why are these women more promoted? When I talk to my students about Lil Harding, they don't believe me, so they go on Google and then they find out that information is there. Nobody's talking about it. And then you have Melba Lister, the great arranger who did all that work with Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, you have a phenomenal number of women, but these women were also black. And so they were subjected to double of the issues. Being a woman and then being a black woman. And that made it doubly hard. So, but in the community of musicians, nobody had any, everybody knew how valuable these women were and how great their contributions were.
All right, let's get some more music in there, Flash. That's another one of yours. I like that. That one sounded like it was about to swing, as you've been saying all night. It was about to start swinging, wasn't it?
It was jumping.
Swinging.
That was a composition of the great Otis Spann. Otis Spann was a fabulous piano player. He was a piano player for Buddy Waters in Chicago, and he wrote the blues don't like nobody.
That's
and
hilarious.
And he's right. And he wrote that song. I love that song, and so I think that's the first track of the record. Yeah. And
in case people didn't know, that's you scatting at the beginning. Is that scatting that you were doing, or at the beginning?
Yeah, we make the instrument speak.
That's right. That's right. By the phone.
The guitar speaks. It scats.
You know what's if this is not a good comparison, please forgive me, but just the sound of the guitar, the banjo together with the scatting reminds me of Jonathan Butler, who is, from South Africa. He never separates his voice from his instrument, from his guitar. And see other musicians do that, but he does that too. And what you were doing just reminded me of that as a callback to some of his music and sound.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan is a great example. He's a fabulous guitar player from South Africa, but he's also he speaks. He makes the instrument speak. He scats a lot, but that form of scatting, that African tradition, traveled because the one who really made that famous, that natural intuitive inflection to sing what you play, is George Benson. George Benson is the baddest guitar player on the face of the planet, bar none, today. And he comes from a school, he comes from the school of West Montgomery, and before him, Charlie Christian. And black guitar, or the aesthetics of black people with the guitar, that's a school of thought. So when we hear Benson in Africa, we hear the tradition. We hear somebody who's making the guitar speak. He's making the instrument speak.
No doubt.
And so we are naturally connected to that expression. And Benson does it so beautifully. We can only aspire to his level of skill and craftsmanship.
Now, that's high praise coming from a guy like you, who is held in such high regard. So how did you, George is there. So who else do you like? I mean, what can you listen to all kinds of music? I mean, do you listen to R&B, 70s R&B, 80s R&B, or electronic music, or can you appreciate it all, or do you just stay away from it? How do you feel about it?
Well, we were talking about jazz earlier, and I was telling you that my dad used to play all those jazz records, and I didn't. No, I didn't like them because, it was an art. I was listening to art, and I wasn't ready for art. Because in order to be ready for art, you have to be educated in what you're listening. And he was playing Sonny Rollins and Modern Jazz Quartet, and these guys were playing stuff way above my pay grade. It took me almost a decade to only begin to understand what these guys were doing. That's how important jazz is to the level of human creativity. I love James Brown because there was a backbeat, and I think at the MLK ceremony, I asked Russell to play Bobby Byrd. I know you got sold because Bobby Byrd is the one who discovered James Brown, and James Brown was his keyboard player and his background vocalist. And that's where James got his music. That when we talk about R&B, that's where James took it. And so I could relate to James Brown because he was saying "baby, baby," and there were two chords, and it was really dance oriented. But bebop, man, that was above my ability to hear. So when people say, well, how come jazz doesn't sell? I said jazz can't sell. Because people want to dance, they can't be working a 9 to 5 and then go out and listen to to Cherokee or Giant Step. You know, to enjoy that, you have to have enough money that you have you have an entire week, you have the pool, and you can say, let me challenge my intellect. In America, we don't have that luxury, Black people.
Yeah.
Every day is a struggle. So a lot of that stuff, you know, when we hear music, we want it. The reason why we love smooth jazz is because there's not too much to think about. It, you know, the beats are at our heart rate, so it carries us down. And then they play long tones. You know, that's why he was so popular with the Black community, because he plays long tone melodies that mellows us out. So, all of these are formulas, you know.
Yeah.
But to come back to your thing, you know, the James Brown of the world, the Marvin Gaye, the entire school of Motown. I mean, this was Aretha. This was an amazing gift that the African American community gave this nation. Till this day, the band that's the most popular at every wedding is Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah.
Hold on, time out. Look at this guy right here. This guy just loves some Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Grinning ear to ear.
I don't need to keep telling y'all. Y'all already know.
But whether you're looking at George Clinton and Parliament, or you're looking at Bootsy Collins, you know, it's amazing when you look at what the African American community created. Man, the positives that came out of America, 99% of it comes out of the Black community.
Ooh, put that on a t-shirt.
Bob, don't let anyone else tell you otherwise.
Period.
So what is this class that you teach at USF? And can you go and just take that one class? Can I just take that one class? With no grade. I just want to just show up and no grade. I don't want no pressure on me. Like that.
I don't want to write no papers.
I just want to I don't want to write no papers. I just want to sit and absorb it. Can I sit back and do that?
You realize that's not our tradition. The African tradition, we created school, and we created writing, and we created paper.
So you will be writing a paper.
All right. Okay. All right.
Otherwise, you have to turn in your black card, Jerry.
Having said that, I welcome anybody to come and sit in my classes. It's important. And I have guests who come and sit in my classes. The Archbishop of the St. John Coltrane Church comes and sits in my classes. I have a lot of people who come in. And what I'm telling you, you can go verify what's in my books. People can go and verify it. It's our history, it's our heritage, it's our tradition. The more you know about our continent, the greater our impact.
But don't be surprised when you see me sitting in the back corner.
That's all right.
Pretending like I'm writing something down, you know.
That's okay. There is no power in not knowing who you are.
That's
exactly.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. You know
what? You got a couple. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ron.
I was going to say, what's beautiful is it is accessible. We haven't, as much as they try to mute our understanding and our knowledge of ourselves, we haven't been divorced from it too much. You know, if you go to Black church, you spoke about spirituality. If you go to Black church, call and worship or praise and worship is music. It's a call to song. It's a call to worship, but it has to happen with the music. You can't just deliver a sermon. That's how you can discern a Black church from other churches. You know, we speak about the food and our traditions there. There are shows like High on the Hog where, you know, we haven't lost it too much. You know, High on the Hog really explores the roots of where it came from. But all you got to do is, you know, go to a holiday with Black folks and you'll see that we haven't divorced ourselves from our traditions too much. It's in our music. It's in how we move, think, and be. Absolutely.
And if these are African traditions, Africans pray loud.
Yes.
We do. Africans pray loud. They, you know, why? Because it is, and they pray with the music because it is the rhythm and the music that induces the possession of the spirit.
Yes. Yes.
And African Americans have not lost that. That's what you call the Holy Ghost.
Yes, sir.
And that's why when you go to churches, sometimes you have people whose job it is to hold people, because when they get happy, when the Holy Ghost, they start dancing and jumping up and down, and you have people whose job it is to hold them so they don't hurt themselves.
That's right.
The idea that you have to be quiet, don't say nothing. In African traditions, we don't believe these people are religious.
No.
You know, because you have, in order to remove yourself from reality, to connect with your Creator, you need the rhythm, you need the music. That's how you get into that other sphere of knowledge, you know. And you see that in the Black churches.
Amen.
We got one more song that CJ wants to play, so let's.
Let me, before you play that song, you see that word you just say, amen?
Yes, sir.
You know where that comes from?
No.
That's an African word. It comes from Ammon, which is the name of the god of gods of Egypt.
Come on now.
No,
CJ knew it.
It comes from Ammon, the god of gods. The Lord's Prayer that you recite every night.
Our Father.
Our Father who art in heaven. It's written word for word in the pyramids.
Come on now. See?
For word in the pyramids. When Champollion, the person who discovered the hieroglyphics, when he read that, he couldn't believe it. And he wanted to do a conference about it, because nobody had said that concept came out of, and you know what happened to him? They shortened his life.
Of course they did. Yeah.
But the Lord's Prayer is written in the pyramids on stones. And when you say Amen at the end, you say the God of gods.
God of gods. Come on.
All right. CJ, give us one more.
Let it groove. All night long. Let it groove. All night long. Let it groove. All night long.
Nice.
Talk about swinging.
Okay. Okay. Let it groove. Wow.
So where can people go see you guys? You got any shows coming up anytime soon? I know you're all over the country, and we're watching. People are watching us from all over the country too. So
and the world.
Wherever you are, there might be somebody close. So where are you going?
Well, I think we're going to be at the Stockton Flavor Festival. That's on May 20th.
Nice.
That's it's a big festival, big event. So we'll be there third week of May 20th, and we're supposed to be in Arizona and New Mexico, but I don't know that it's going to happen. A lot of it depends on agents and funding and this and that and the other. Just the usual story of bands and be on the road. But I've got to be. I mean, I teach. I have over 200 students, so my department chair expects me to be in class until at least the second week of May.
Yeah.
But that's why May 20th is my first out band, show with the band out, and then hopefully we have more work after that. But we're looking to play, and so anywhere it's a large band, unfortunately, but because I have African percussionists, I have banjo, I've got fiddle, I've got marimba, I've got rhythm section, and so forth. But the vehicle of music It's a band that plays fun music. Conceptually, the band represents the history of this nation, its textures, because we need to claim the banjo as our instrument, and we need to make it swing again. Hold that instrument. It has been fundamental to our expression, our well-being. So we need to go back and play it. We need to go back and put it in our music wherever we feel we need, wherever it fits. But we need to claim it. The balafon, the ancestor of the marimba, I play it because it's such an important instrument. It is the first fixed tone instrument in the history of humanity. It means that the tonality, once you establish it and the aesthetics of it, it doesn't move. A string instrument, you put it down, the strings go out of tune, you come back, you have nothing is steady.
Right.
The balafon, once you cut that blade of wood, you put that gourd underneath, you hit it, it stays. You come back next week, same tonality.
Yes.
When you cut, and you know from your classes in physics, the longer the piece of wood, the lower the tone, the shorter the piece of wood, the higher the tone.
Yes.
Once you start putting those blades, you've defined an aesthetic of tonality.
Yeah. Wow.
People I have Europeans telling me, oh yeah, we created harmony, I said, you created nothing. We told you the rules of harmony because you don't have a fixed tone instrument before we bring the balafon.
Wow.
Right.
Period. So the narrative, we just need to make the effort, you know, to sort of recalibrate the narrative. Why? Because we were on the planet 3 billion years ago. And it's not Dr. T saying it. It's a scientist. Lucy, they found out she's 3.2 million years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long have we been roaming the planet?
Yeah.
We went everywhere. You know?
Yeah.
So of course.
Of course.
All right. Look, this has been fascinating. Fascinating. Like I said, music, conversation, education. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. Tell people one more time about your website. I'm going to flash up some of your books and your record albums while you're talking about, but tell them where they can find your website and things like that and reach out to you.
PascalBokar.com. And for people who wonder why Afro Bluegrass, it's not that I don't know bluegrass. It's just that bluegrass is the summary of bluegrass and jazz.
Ah, nice.
Jazz is the form of improvisation. Bluegrass is because that's our instrument that made that possible.
Beautiful.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
well, again, we thank you very much for being here. I did want to say one more thing that me, Ryan, CJ, Russ are going to be at tomorrow night. In case you're in the Bay Area, you need something to do. Tomorrow night, we've got a great big San Francisco Black History Month celebration. It's a homecoming at City Hall. You got to make sure you get tickets in advance because they're free, but it will get full. So you can go check out this and if I can read that, or just go to the IRTS.
Let me help you.
SFBHM
CE-2023.eventbrite.com.
Oh, nice. To be so young to be able to see that. So, and if you can't see that or you didn't catch what she said, just go to the VIP lounge and you will check it out. Purple Cherry Productions, which is my production company, is happy to provide some of the talent that includes Ryan Nicole, Dee Dee Simon, Jennifer Johns, Miranda Wilson, and me. I'm not singing, I'm just doing the stage. And CJ and Ross will be doing the after party. So we all over that thing tomorrow.
Yes, a great thing. It's always a great night.
Doctor, once again, we thank you very much for being part of the show. You're not part of our family. And I know where people are going to want to reach out to you all the time. So I'm going to give them your website and I'm going to give them all that information. We're going to sell some CDs, cassettes, 8-tracks, whatever it is that you're selling. Okay? Deal? All right. And so everybody that's watching, thank you again for watching. We're going to catch you next week with another episode of IRTS Live. Peace out.
IRTS Live is brought to you by United Players. It takes the hood to save the hood. Lifelong Medical Care, offering free vaccines for everyone 12 and over. Call Lifelong at 510-549-5454 or visit lifelongmedical.org. Brought to you by CDove HR Consulting Group, the human resources specialist, providing personalized service to building a better tomorrow. Enjoy the difference. This episode is powered by PlushLifeMedia.com. Let us remix your digital presence. Check out gdovedesigns.com to get t-shirts and hoodies that make a statement. Join DJs Big Russ and CJ Flash for the world-famous show live Fridays, noon to 4 Pacific. Catch them on the following social media platforms. And if you'd like to join us as a sponsor, please email us at info@irtsshow.com.